Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to some. Welcome to the first and hopefully many more design forums. This is very exciting. Actually, I don't have the number up, but I think we're close to over 100 people attending this workshop. So incredible way to start off the very first design forum given by name. The 2021 Design Forum series will include 3 online forums and hopefully a day-long forum in the fall of 2021. So please keep an eye out in the future for upcoming design forums. My name is Lonnie Schwartz. I'm on the name board in the Southeast regional representative. I would like to first off thank the speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedule to speak with us, as well as a few of the name reps that has helped organize this design series. I'd like to thank Carolyn Harris, Emily Sage, and Lori Pasteryak for helping me out. The design series is just one of many events that NAME is organizing. Events are happening every month all over the country. NAME membership is broken up into 6 regions across the country, and each region is assigned a representative who's responsible for creating events within each of those regions. If you're interested in more in learning more about what events are in your regions, please go to the NAME website. The one thing that the NAME reps continue to hear from our members is the need for more dialogue around the practice of exhibit design. The one thing that NAME representatives, this is why we have developed a series specifically around exchanging ideas and nurturing creativity. We hope you enjoy these workshops. Now I'm going to introduce Penny, who is the NAME president, also to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Lonnie. I am so excited to be here for our first design forum. And as Lonnie said, I think it's really astonishing to me that we've got over 120 people now logged into this program. It just shows that people are hungry for networking and hungry to talk about exhibitions and design. But first, I understand that not everyone here is necessarily a member of NAME. So I wanted to start with, who is NAME? What is NAME? We are the National Association for Museum Exhibition, which is a professional network of the American Alliance of Museums. NAME represents over 2,500 museum staff, independent professionals, and businesses that support museums in creating exhibitions. Our membership includes designers, content developers, project managers, writers, fabricators, evaluators, and of course, others who are engaged in making exhibitions for the public. And we work in science, art, history, and children's museums, at parks and visitor centers, zoos, aquaria, botanic gardens, and I'm sure I'm leaving folks out. So if I didn't mention your particular brand of exhibition making, I apologize, but know that you're here in good company, and that we all are bringing our own perspectives and our own experience to this work. Our leadership team, our board that Lonnie mentioned, of which I'm honored to serve as the president, we include folks from all of these sectors. And with all these different specialties, you'd think that we get lost in the weeds, that we'd be constantly pulling in different directions to center the specifics of our brand of exhibition. But of course, it turns out that's not really how exhibition folks roll, right? We enjoy teamwork, and we share so many similar strategies and challenges that we never seem to run out of hot topics for great, juicy discussions. And as you'll see in the sessions this morning, at least it's morning here in California, these differences are where the fun is. The creative friction can really fan the flames of interesting ideas. So as Lonnie mentioned, this series started as a conversation about how NAME's programs and events serve different parts of our community of exhibition makers. If you're not familiar with NAME, we also publish a peer-reviewed journal, which I'm displaying behind me. It's called Exhibition, which tends to take on topics of planning and development and content, often with forays into productions and evaluation. We host conference events at the annual meeting of AAM every year. Those are fun, informal opportunities for everyone in our network to get together. Those are often content light, but networking heavy. NAME also supports AAM's annual meeting scholarship program. We're one of the 4 organizing networks, along with educators, curators, and evaluation committees of the annual Excellence in Exhibition Award competition. And other programs around the regions. But as Lonnie said, we're really hoping with this series to drill down some more into design practice, which is so hard to do when we can't physically be in exhibition spaces together. So maybe it's the energy from yesterday's inauguration that has me all fired up, but I really am looking forward to getting into it with you all. So my sincere gratitude to Lonnie and the other volunteers who have built this first forum. My continued thanks, of course, to our industry sponsors who support NAME's work and whose ads you'll see in the journal. And I really am hopeful that this series will take wings and become another regular channel through which we can all connect and share ideas and promote excellence in our practice. So welcome, thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it, I believe, back to Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Penny and Lonnie. As I mentioned earlier, when we get into the breakout room sessions, those are going to be highly interactive, and we're going to be using Jamboard. This is a Google service that you may have may not used before, so we just want to very quickly go over some basic functions of that. Let me share my screen to show you. So this would just be a blank Jamboard, but just really quickly want to go over some of the features. The first thing you're going to notice is at the top, there is a number for which slide you are on. Now, when we get out into our groups, we'll be in 20 different breakout rooms. When you join those breakout rooms, there will be a prompt on the screen that lets you know which breakout room number you are joining. And what we want is when you join the Jamboard to go to the slide that corresponds to your number. So if you're in breakout room 2, you would navigate to slide 2 using these arrows. If you're in breakout room 5, you would navigate to slide 5, so on, so on. For the purpose of our forum today, there's really just a few features here that you need to pay attention to. You'll see on the left, you have your toolbar. It's automatically selected to a cursor that lets you select items. You'll also see a sticky note feature. Clicking this will allow you to add your own notes to the Jamboard, as you see here. And then once you've added your note, you can move that around, make it prominent, if need be, delete it. A similar function is the text box, which does the same and lets you just add directly. And again, you can move those around as needed. A few other functions, there is a pen tool and an eraser. The pen tool is a little difficult if you're on a laptop computer, but maybe if you're on an iPad or phone, that's preferred to use. And then the eraser helps you erase that. One key point, please do not press clear frame at the top. If you do that, you will remove the input that others are providing on the screen. So if you don't like what you're doing, just delete it, or you can press the undo button here. And as I mentioned earlier, when we do get to this Jamboard session, please be sure to keep the chat open, because in the chat is where we're going to be providing the links for these Jamboards for everyone to join. And with that, I will turn it over to Ellen, who's going to get us started today.
Hi all. Ellen actually got kicked off. So I'm sorry, I'm Ellen's helper. So welcome to Tech in 2021 and programs in 2021. So I'm going to kick this over to Lonnie really quick. And I will connect with Ellen and then we will get started. So hold on one moment with us.
Okay. Andrew, do we want to just maybe go to Beth and just change the order? Or is that too hard?
Well, let's see if she can get Ellen here. Also, just another note, because I'm seeing a few people are joining by telephone, that will make it a little more difficult for you to be in the interactive part with the Jamboard, but that's okay. You'll still hear your fellow participants and be able to communicate that way. And also, just a heads up, because you are muted automatically, I believe you have to press 6 on your phone to unmute yourself and join the conversation once we get into the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I would say, why don't we just go ahead and move on with Beth?
Okay. Beth?
And start our tool talk conversation. Is that all right, Beth?
Absolutely.
Good.
No problem at all. So I will, hello everyone. I'm thrilled to see the number of people here. This is fantastic. And I'm going to be sharing my screen, so hang on.
I'll give you a brief introduction so you guys know who Beth is. This is Carolyn Harris, and I am the
Mountain Plains rep her name. And Beth was so kind to join us. She is an associate professor of architecture at the School of Architecture and Planning at the University of Buffalo, State University of New York. And she is project director in the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access, which is known as IDEA at UB. And her research focuses on inclusive design, especially the empowerment of underrepresented groups through design. She has served as a co-principal investigator for 3 NEA Universal Design Leadership Grants, and she's written several books, some of which are of great interest to folks like us, like Inclusive Design, Implementation and Evolution, and Universal Design. So with that, I will turn it over to Beth.
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank you all for putting a program like this together. I think it's really important. So I'd like to start off talking a little bit about the word inclusion. There's a lot of controversy today, these days, about the word inclusion. And while it's a nice enough word, I mean, basically it means, we think of it as welcoming and tolerant. But that whole idea of it being welcoming and tolerant is part of the problem. There's a theorist whose name is Peter Slayton, and he says, and I quote here, "The generosity of spirit that inclusion carries also informs us of who is leading the way. The same forces that maintained exclusionary policies until it dawned on them that society has changed, those are the people who are considered to be those who are really, in some ways, the leaders of inclusion. Finally, however, though, the includers with quotes, are realizing that different people bring different perspectives and add essential strengths to the organizations from which they have been excluded for most of American history. So now that this longstanding behavior is being actively reversed under the aegis of inclusivity, how do we avoid the othering that is implied by that term? I think it's a very important question for us to be thinking about. Let's see if I can get there we go. And my concept about how we do that is through process. So today, what we're going to do is examine 7 characteristics, or we might call them tenets, of an inclusive process. In order to discuss process, though, we need to agree on a few things up front. So first of all, we need to agree that that understanding the connections between diversity and design is essential to 21st century education, and also 21st century practice. To that end, inclusive policies focus on the relationship of design to the changing nature of our societies. As exhibit designers, it is essential that we examine the history and diversity of cultural experiences and their attendant design issues. Specifically, we need to concentrate on the ways in which our design world affects various populations, and in turn, the way that these populations have affected our designed worlds. We need to consider the important diversity issues of our time. We all know what they are: race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic conditions, age, disability, and religion. There are probably many more. So now that we have agreed upon a few things, I don't know if you really agree with that or not, but I'm assuming that this is a way of setting the context. Let's look at a few basic ideas that provide the underlying framework for an inclusive practice. There are 7 of them. Pardon me. So the first is that people and their needs come first. In much of design, we focus on functional needs, and this might include accommodating a wide range of body sizes and abilities. Maybe it's ensuring legibility, or in this particular case here, It's about keeping people warm and sheltered from the wind. This is an ice skating, these are warming huts for an ice skating rink. Pardon me, I need to take a drink. Got a little fog in my throat there. But there are also more subtle needs, such as incorporating opportunities for choice and respecting cultural values. Considering those maybe kind of hidden or non-visual needs as a fundamental element in the design process might ensure that they actually happen. Again, pardon me for the cough here. The third is that power relationships are equal. Architect Julia Jomrazic designed this playground equipment to put everyone on equal footing, or probably a better term for that would be equal swinging. The interesting thing about this project is that cooperation is required for everyone to swing safely. I think it's a wonderful metaphor for this process principle in terms of inclusive design. So as designers, we must find ways to create balanced teams where respectful communications, open discussion, shared responsibility, and a general lack of attention to status allow people to work together to create successful exhibits. Next slide. Human diversity and life experience are valued. Trafalgar Square is an outdoor exhibition site with a deeply rooted cultural context that involves the honoring of war heroes. There are 4 plinths on the square, 3 of which display typical male hero statues. The 4th plinth stood blank until Mark Quinn was commissioned to install a sculpture entitled Alison Lapper Pregnant. Alison Lapper, for those of you who don't know, is an English artist who was born without arms and shortened legs. This sculpture celebrates imperfection and the beauty of different kinds of bodies, as well as the strength and vitality of the human spirit. So I think this is a case where even the most traditional exhibits can benefit from the infusion of multiple points of view. Next is recipients of design participate on the team. Here we have a group of students in a program that we have in Buffalo called the Architecture and Education Program. And they were tasked with making design recommendations for their own neighborhood on the east side of Buffalo, not the best neighborhood in the city. They presented their work at a local gallery and were invited by the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo to participate in a meeting on East Side improvements. 3 of their recommendations were adopted and are now in the works. Another characteristic is that cultural contexts and situational factors determine the approach. What we're looking at here is a work by Walter Hood. He designed a project in Nashville which reveals the city's role in the historic civil rights movement in Public Square Park downtown. In this installation, Hood reveals unpleasant histories that were hidden for several decades. His design, which is called Witness Walls, is a set of fragmented sculptural walls inspired by the classical sculpted friezes commemorating the heroic and mythic events in antiquity. Walking among the walls, visitors are placed in the center of historic moments represented by photos from the collection of the Nashville Public Library's Civil Rights Reading Room. The installation is located steps away from the historic April 19th, 1960 student-led protest that led then Mayor Ben West to disavow segregation of Nashville's lunch counters. The next tenet or characteristic is that evidence-based decision-making and evaluation ground the process. In this teaching exhibit that we're looking at here, designers at the Live Well Center of the University of Cincinnati trace the collaboration between designers, healthcare workers, and patients in the development of a new patient-provider self-monitoring tool for teens who have sickle cell disease, the most common genetic order in the US. The team used an evidence base developed by researchers at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital to address the difficult transition that teens experience as they move from pediatric to adult care, just as the disease worsens. Preventative medical support systems such as this are essential components of healthy lifestyles for children and adults. Now, this exhibit is, very scientifically based, but there are other kinds of exhibits. A lot of you are doing exhibits that are multisensory these days. And those types of exhibits also benefit from actually bringing in an evidence base, a scientific base for the kinds of things that are being attempted. And then finally, considering unintended consequences expands the scope of injury. That's a real slip of inquiry, not injury, but in this case, injury as well. So what we're looking at here, this is not an exhibit, but this is an example of unintended consequences. The individual cluster bombs used in Afghanistan and Kuwait, known as bomblets, are metal-shaped like soft drink cans, and they're packed with high explosives. They also happen to be yellow. The food ration packages are rectangular of a similar size to the bomblets, covered in yellow plastic, and contain a 2,000 calorie meal. Although the latter are square and the former cylindrical, both are dropped from US planes and both are yellow and both have English in terms of the language that's used. And they are very easy to spot on the ground. So I'm not going to say anything to you. You can imagine the unintended consequences of this situation. While most exhibits will not have unintended consequences as dire as this, think about a display depicting the beginning of our nation that does not include the Seneca or the Iroquois perspective. What are the consequences of an oversight like this? And so that's the kind of thing that you might be thinking about when you're thinking about this in terms of inclusive design itself. So when we are designing, we need to ask ourselves these questions. And I'm going to just do a little review here for you. Are we putting people and their needs first? Are the power relationships on our team equal and balanced? Are we valuing human diversity and life experience? Are recipients of design participating on the team? Are cultural contexts and situational factors determining the way that we approach the exhibit? Are evidence-based decision-making and evaluation grounding our process? Are we considering unintended consequences to expand the scope of our inquiry? If you can positively answer these questions, chances are that your design process is inclusive. So in closing, inclusive practice requires thoughtful changes that often involve extended and more complex processes. However, it is also more thoughtful, thorough, and responsive to a diverse range of needs, thereby reducing the risk of problems later on. And most important, it uses the design process to bring about social change. We need to remember when we're doing all of this that design alone cannot overcome systemic poverty, nor can it eliminate racism or ageism, nor can it undo political oppression or genocide. But design, and even though design cannot really save the world, designers cannot afford, even amidst of skepticism and debate, to abandon it either. At the core of design are optimism and persistence. At the core of inclusive design are safety, function, and delight, and especially delight. As such, we are asked to be thoughtful, socially conscious designers who use inclusive processes to consider the possible consequences of this intriguing time in which we live. Thank you very much. This is my email address in case you need it.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was great. I don't know, Lonnie, do we have time for questions because of a few minutes, or should we wait till the end? I don't know where we are.
Yeah, I think we have about a minute or two. We can take a few questions.
So if anybody has a question in the chat
We'll
screen,
stop sharing my screen. Hang on.
if anybody has a specific question, they can raise their hand. I thought I was very interested myself in the power relationships. I think that in my experience as a museum planner, that's something that just gets accepted and not questioned. So I appreciated that myself. I don't know if there are any other questions, so we can move on to the next presentation, but I really appreciated that. And we are recording this, by the way. So, and you can always reach out and we'll have our information at the end.
Okay, I do have one question here. Are the 7 tenets published anywhere? They are published in one of the most recent journals for interior design education. And I can, while we're doing other things, I can set up the link for that for you if you'd like it.
Great. Yeah, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
There's a question here that said, could you elaborate on cultural context and situational factors determining the approach a little bit?
Well, yeah, so I think that one of the things that is really important when you're developing exhibits is to think about, okay, here we have a lot of givens in a particular topic. And so what are the givens that we're not thinking about? What is the situation here? How does the context of this, so let's say I'm going to use Buffalo. We're at the Albright Knox, which is a lovely gallery that was built in the early 1900s in Buffalo, New York. It's a very high-end gallery with a lot of very famous mid-20th century works. And let us say that the Albright Knox is going to do, I'm making this up on the spot, but the Albright Knox is going to do an exhibit on quilting, all right, the fine art of quilting. When we think about the fine art of quilting, there are many, many histories. And if we think about the Albright Knox Gallery, it is dedicated to mostly high art. So then one might think, well, those quilts should be in the high art category. Then we look at Buffalo itself, and we look at the US, and we look at the kinds of contexts in which we're living and where the kind of quilting culture of Buffalo has developed. If we start thinking about that quilting culture and how it makes sense, even in a gallery like the Albright, that would be one kind of situation. I think that is an example of this. The big issue here for me is that we've got these erased histories, and as designers, it takes more work, but it's very important for us to understand what those erased histories are. Maybe the good question would be, who should be here who is being overlooked? Or who is being overlooked and why? What is being overlooked and why? How can that enrich the situation? That's a little too long-winded, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen and Karen. We probably need to go ahead and move on to the next one.
Sure, you can always put questions.
Sorry, Beth, and thank you, Beth and Carolyn.
Yeah.
We need to go ahead and move on to Ellen. If Ellen, you're back.
Ellen, we can see your screen, but I think you're still muted.
There we go. I'll get this right, I promise. Okay, can you hear me now? You can see my screen. Ah, a miracle. Thank you, Beth. I loved hearing what you had to say. It's really important. I'm a curator at Cooper Hewitt Museum in New York City, and I get to work on lots of exhibitions. I also do a lot of publishing. And I want to talk to you about visual communication in exhibition design and environmental design. Thank you, Name. Thank you, Lori. She's really co-produced this event with me. So I'm really excited to be working with her. Some of the ideas I'm going to present come from this book that Cooper Hewitt published in 2017 called Design is Storytelling. And a big theme of the book is the idea of a path. And as exhibition people, we're constantly thinking about a path and bringing people along a certain journey. And that is really intrinsic to all graphic design, all communication design has some kind of journey or path to it. A lot of stories, the path is so important. It's actually a character in the book, right? The path is where it's all about, right? It's an icon, it's a shape, it's a color, it's everything. If I look at a really basic image like this of a path through the woods, it immediately creates point of view. It creates an invitation for me to enter this image. It has a kind of narrative built into it right from the get-go. And if you Google big picture of forest, as I did, you'll get pictures like these, which are the popular pictures, many of which have a path, or they have two trees having a conversation, or a really important tree, or a waterfall, or a stream, or sunlight filtering like God right from above. And those kinds of very basic narratives are at the core of effective visual communication. Graphic designers have always known this. This is a poster from Cooper Hewitt's collection by E. McKnight Coffer. And it has a path, and that path invites us to enter the scene, and we are rewarded if we go down that path by sunlight and baby mushrooms. This is also a poster by E. McKnight Coffer, and it's much more abstract and futuristic. It's from later in his career, but it also has a path. Essentially, it has the same structure, and this path leads us to the future, and the future is a motorcycle. Photo montage, amazing. I want to show you some examples of visual communication design that bring us literally on a physical journey. So this amazing mural in London by Yinka Ilori, in order to absorb the piece, you are walking down the street, you are experiencing a spatial and temporal event. This is a store in New York City. I hope to go back there someday, the Camper shoe store. And from across the street, this amazing piece of graphics beckons me. It's the logo for the store. And so I make my journey. I cross the street, I enter the store, I'm inside. I love this logo. I love typography. I love graphic design. But where the hell are the shoes? Right, it's a shoe store. Well, the shoes are on the other side of the graphic. So it's like a lenticular print that becomes shelving for shoes. So I love this, right? This is graphics that becomes a journey, that becomes an embodied experience that brings us through the store. As designers and exhibition planners and writers of exhibition scripts, we often think about a journey for our visitor, and that journey is literally spatial, but it is also about a process, right? Where do I get my ticket? When do I get to sit down? Are people going to get bored? You know, how long are they going to spend? So these kind of graphic tools are really useful for exhibition designers. This one is by Ben Jett, who's an exhibition designer at Solid Light in Louisville, Kentucky. And his graph is about points of emotional intensity, right? So as an exhibition designer, you want to plot out those points where people will be really confronted with something difficult or exciting or challenging, and when they need a rest, right? So let's take a little trip to IKEA, a place with lots of graphic design that brings us on a journey, a very controlled journey, a labyrinth, in fact. And this graphic arrow is actually projected. It's a, you know, one of those projected graphic things. So you walk right through it. It never goes away. And the path is shiny and it has an edge on it, right? And this is that route that drags you through the IKEA store. It makes you go by all the right things, right? You have no choice. And then you go down into the belly of the warehouse and it's like the hero's journey and you finally make it to the end. And there's this hot dog. And this hot dog is so cheap, they're paying you to eat it. It's a mercy hot dog, right? They know if you don't get this hot dog, you will die like Jack Nicholson at the end of The Shining in the maze, right? So this beckons you, right? It rewards you on your path. And all of these things are signified and marked through graphics and through material changes and light in the store, right? And so that's, you know, a retail environment, very carefully crafted, right, to give people a certain experience. I want to show you an example from another kind of environment, a hospital. This is from a book I just published with Cooper Hewitt and my dear friend, Dr. Bon Ku, on design in healthcare. And one of the examples that we explore in the book is about why do people hate the emergency room? And they hate the emergency room because they hate to wait. And actually, people who are upset waiting in the emergency room are violent. And so a design firm in England was asked to try to solve this problem of violent people in the emergency room with graphic design, with signs. Our friend, cheap vinyl graphics, right? What every museum designer goes to first, that by adding signs that explain to people where they are in the process of the emergency room experience, it calms people down. It's merciful, like the hot dog, right? It just lets you know where you are in your journey. We're seeing lots of social distancing graphics. They're very scary. They are forbidding. They tell us to, you know, right, protect your life. I love this one by Jamie Hyon because it's happy. And it's more about bringing people together than about distancing them. Or this incredible graphic from the Taiwan National Palace Museum, which uses an object from the collection to give people a sense of the physical scale of social distancing. So I love these graphics that are humane and that are bringing people together. This is graphics in a beautiful public square in northern Italy, and these squares were painted and are still there and are in use, painted on the square so that people can social distance. And graphic design is posted throughout to explain to people what the purpose of the squares are. And it's been very successful in the town, and it allows people to actually use the public space safely in a way that is beautiful and respects the heritage of the place. It's removable paint. It's really, really a fantastic project. We're going to do a little activity. We're going to go into breakout rooms and create a memorial for COVID-19. This is an incredible memorial that was part of the inauguration this week. It is for 1,000 lights to represent 400,000 people who have died. It's a temporary installation which references the temporality of this experience that we're in the middle of. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you to a breakout room, and you're going to be in a group of people. You're going to go to a Jamboard. You've all heard about that. Whatever number is your breakout group, go to that page in the Jamboard, and there is a prompt for you to design a memorial. And it's in a specific place, and it's remembering an individual or a group of people. And we want you to think about being inclusive, think about honor, think about participation, think about the people that use the space, that inhabit the space. So this one is, the setting is a warehouse, and we're remembering workers from that warehouse. So I did the project myself last night, and this is what I came up with. It's a kind of forklift ballet that will happen every Friday at quitting time in the warehouse. And all the drivers of the forklifts will go backwards to their assigned parking space. And in so doing, we'll activate the beeping sound of the forklift and the flashing emergency lights of the forklift. And this will bring people together in a moment of remembrance. It's audio and visual, which makes it inclusive. And it's something that people will participate in the space. So that's my little intro to doing our activity. And so we're going to go ahead and go to these breakout rooms. You're going to have under 10 minutes. The groups are, I think, about 10 people. It's okay if somebody takes the lead and goes like, okay, I'll be the sketcher. Do what you can to negotiate collaborating. The idea is really just to get thinking and to be creative for a bit, and then we'll come back and kind of fly through them together. Hey, wow, welcome back. It's been fun for us to watch you working, and I'm going to grab the screen for just a second and just look at a few of these with you. But then I want to see if anybody wants to talk about what they did. We really just have like 2 or 3 minutes to talk so we can get to the last workshop. It was really interesting to see that people are clearly collaborating with the tool and, you know, using this as a brainstorming opportunity to put up a bunch of different ideas. Many of the ideas are about ritual and about involving people in doing something, but others are suggesting, you know, permanent monuments, which is really nice too. I love the idea of a projection, you know, back to the IKEA era, but like a projection that could add some psychological depth to people's work experience, I think is really cool. This one is about a university. And so ideas about leaving some of the desks empty is really interesting. The idea of inverting away from sadness and mourning towards celebrating love and healing. That's a theme that came up in a couple people's proposal. So that's really cool. Most people were very verbal, you know, writing Post-it notes, which is great. Something we're all familiar with, but it was fun to see. There was one really intense drawing here. And it was fun watching this actually being drawn, you know, real time in the software was really cool. So I'm gonna stop sharing and see if we have a volunteer who would like to talk about what they did. And if you just direct us to the page, we can all go to the page where your project is rather than share the screen more, or I can go to that page. So who does anybody want to talk about what your group proposed? No. Okay.
I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer.
Okay, give it 1 beautiful minute for us. Thank you. What page are you on?
4.
Page 4. Okay. Go ahead. Tell us about it.
So jump in, my team, our team. This is remembering inmates and staff at a correctional institution. And so we thought about doing something in the lower left, right-hand corner of the courtyard. I'm calling it a courtyard. I'm sure it's nothing like a courtyard, but it has rooms. And we thought that that would be a really cool place to create murals, to have people bring stuff, you know, like when someone is lost in a car accident and people put little trinkets and things along it. We thought about creating groups that normally wouldn't be together of the inmates. And my first instinct was like each group could do a different thing, but then someone mentioned like sort of this cross-pollination. So we thought that collaboratively and user-driven would be really important.
And also that it's been shown that people doing something together, I think it was a Heineken study, that people doing something together got them to step out of their polarized left and right, or in this case, white supremacist, one gang, Latin gang, that getting people under certain circumstances to do something together also gets them to reduce polarization. However, that could be problematic. It also can be something where people that have good behavior points can be the ones selected to do the mural drawings or things like that. That follows a program in New Orleans, in the jail in New Orleans, where they've done all sorts of lovely art and many projects.
Great. Thanks for bringing your expertise to that also. Well, I'm going to close it up and let the next workshop begin. But thank you all for participating, and thanks for your patience with technical issues. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellen. I think Beth, our last workshop. So thanks everybody for hanging with us. We're somewhat on schedule, but Beth, if you're ready.
Hi, I'm the other Beth. I am Beth Redmond-Jones. Thank you, Ellen and Beth, for your amazing insight. I feel really honored to be sharing this space with you today. And thanks to Emily Sage for wrangling me into this. It's really exciting when she told me about it. So I'm the VP of Exhibitions and Facilities here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. In May, I'll be coming up on my 2-year anniversary. And needless to say, it's been a kind of a wild ride for the last year plus with COVID and everything else. Prior to coming here, I was the VP of Engagement and Education at the San Diego Natural History Museum, where I oversaw exhibits, K-12 education, and public programs and volunteers. So today, let's see, I'm going to be sharing with you an Ignite that I presented at the MCN conference in 2019. Emily was there, and it's focused on the future of accessibility. And we thought this would be a nice forum to share this in again. So for those of you who don't know what Ignite is, it is a 5-minute presentation. Slides change every 15 seconds, and I got to be on target, and hopefully I will be with the timing. So we'll see. But part of this activity is there is participation by all of you. So I'd like to ask that everyone turn their camera on, because we're going to need to see you at one point in this. So you can look at your colleagues. So I will just leave it at that. So I will share my screen. And okay, I'm so used to Google Slides that I have to figure out how to do this here. There we go. Start from the beginning. Okay, can everybody see? Lonnie, thumbs up? Yes, okay.
Good, yep.
I can see you on my camera. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Beth Redmond-Jones, museum peep, nature geek, and a mom to a daughter with autism and mental health challenges. Accessibility and a lack thereof is something I experience through my daughter and her service dog on a daily basis. Some days are a struggle like this. Other days are accessible. So let's start at the beginning. Accessible, adjective. 1, capable of being used or seen. 2, capable of being understood or appreciated. 3, easily used or accessed by people with disabilities. When one thinks about the word accessibility, disability is often implied. I hate the word disabled because when it's in the context of a person, disabled implies a mindset of being less than, being broken, or lacking. It disregards potential and ability. Are these people broken? No way. We need to authentically see and understand individuals for who they are. Each of us is unique, each with our own visible and invisible challenges, and no one should have barriers placed in front of them. So raise your hand and keep them up. If you, a friend, a colleague, a family member has a mental health challenge, wears glasses or is blind, is hearing impaired, has autism, has sensory processing disorder, has memory issues, uses a walker or a wheelchair. Now look at your colleagues in front of you. How many hands do you see? This is our present and our future. We live in a world full of individuals with physical and mental challenges. In years to come, each of us will have visible and invisible challenges that will impede our access. You can take your hands down. Future, adjective, 1, that is to be. 2, of, relating to or expressive of time yet to come, existing or occurring at a later time. But our future is now, our future is here. Accessibility should not be a barrier to innovation, but a gateway. It shouldn't be because we have to comply with ADA. It should be because we want people to feel and be welcomed. Accessibility provides options, and options lead to innovation. Take peeling potatoes. Remember crappy metal peelers? Today, most of us use the one on the right, which was developed and designed for individuals with arthritis, but is now one of the most common used peelers globally. Why? Because it works for everyone. Take curb cuts. In 1945, the first was created, but now they're commonplace throughout the United States, and they are helpful for everyone. People in wheelchairs, parents with strollers, kids on scooters, individuals with seeing eye dogs, you and me. Think about your museum. Does your building, website, exhibitions, and programs meet the needs of visitors with physical, cognitive, hearing, and visual challenges? What about language? I know that not all of your visitors are fluent in English. Think about your circle of influence. Is it part of the accessible museum? If so, awesome. And how can you make it more so? If not, why not? What can you do to change that? How can you innovate to make things more accessible? The Desert at Night Story Theater at the Nat addresses accessibility in regards to language. It's in Spanglish and tells the story through photos, video, animated drawings, and descriptive audio. It addresses numerous challenges, yet is fun and accessible for everyone. What about your museum's website? Hopefully it's not like his. Do you have proper contrast ratio? Can it be navigated without a mouse? Are there simple headings and spacings? Do you offer alternatives for consuming media? And a March 2019 study showed that 97% of the 1 million top websites failed the test for ADA web accessibility, which means a user with a disability can expect to encounter errors on 1 in every 13 elements that they engage with. That's not accessible nor acceptable. So how do we address the future of accessibility? By doing the hard work, but not in a vacuum. Don't assume you know what a specific community needs. Involve them. They live it, you don't. And what comes out of those collaborations will most likely help others as well. When I was at the Nat, we did the work. We engaged 10 young adults with autism to create social stories for 7 museums in Balboa Park. This project opened museums to individuals with autism and sensory processing challenges. These young adults inspired us to do the good work. So take a leap to make your museum more accessible. Tomorrow, next week, the future will bring non-repeatable and never before or since observed versions of ourselves. Change your mindset. Understand others' unique view of the world. Now, please take and say this pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to accessibility and to all the people it will serve, all museums, indivisible, with inclusion and justice for all. So as you work towards a future accessibility, look forward, look sideways, shift your thinking, be innovative, be creative, be inclusive. Together we can make a difference. Together we can change the future of accessibility in museums. Thank you. Okay. So we have a breakout group for you guys. So let me explain what we're going to do. So we're going to split all of you into breakout groups, and Emily is going to be posting the links for the Jamboard. So we're going to be using Jamboard again. So what we're asking you is to think about brainstorm, discuss, document on your Jamboard how you might support visitors with a specific invisible challenge. It's through exhibit design. So the 4 individual or the invisible challenges are going to be autism, sensory processing disorder, dyslexia, and anxiety. So what we're going to do is we're going to send everyone out in groups of 10. Emily, I'm assuming we're still at 10 in each group. We'd like you guys to work together to brainstorm what they will be. So I have to read my notes here now. So note the breakout room that you're sent to, and then navigate to the corresponding slide number with your group. So room 1, we'll use slide 1, room 2, use slide 2, you get the gist. There will be a prompt on the slide for your invisible challenge that you're going to address and a definition of what it is. And then you have about 15 minutes to populate that Jamboard. Myself, Emily, 2 other colleagues of mine, Kirby and Joey, we will be popping into each of the rooms just to check in and make sure there's no questions or answer questions, that type of thing. So I guess that's it. Welcome back. So great to see so many faces that I know and ones I've heard of and never seen before. So it's great to have, I'm lacking colleague engagement. So this is great. So we are 6 minutes from finishing. So instead of us going through each of the pages, we will put together a PDF and send it out to all of you. So you have those resources. We'll just combine them all so you can see it. But I guess what I wanted to ask is, did anyone kind of have a light bulb moment, like about this and thinking about invisible disabilities and exhibit design? If you did, feel free to unmute. If you're too afraid to talk to this many people, get over it and unmute, or put it in the chat. So I saw Elizabeth Nelson. Sorry, I'm going to pick on you because I saw your head going up and down.
Yes. Sorry. No, I think for me, with the light bulb moment is when we consider design, we quite often think about more visible disabilities. And we forget about the mental disabilities, and then again, that's such a weird word to use because I also have a daughter on the autistic spectrum, so I hate that word as too. But it's an easy thing to forget about something you don't see right away, especially as visual people.
I also was thinking of something too, that basically all of the different disabilities that you shared were basically, they're all intersectional, and if you design for one, you're designing for the others in a way. You know, we started talking, our topic was dyslexia, and we started talking about, well, but if someone has anxiety, like we should think about that too, because people with dyslexia sometimes get anxiety when they're experiencing an exhibit, and so really just universal design principles kind of work for everyone. And you know,
oh, I feel conflicted a lot about that statement. I feel like, especially with some of the sensorial ones, they're in conflict with some of the recommendations by the ADA for example, like visibility and volume and high contrast. And so balancing those 2 sets of constraints that don't always sit nicely together is complicated.
Both of you have really good points, but this then gets to my point of engaging the people that you're trying to serve as part of your process. And that may be harder to do, but you could put an outreach to your members, you know, and just trying to look through these things. Ask people on your staff, you know, your volunteers. I mean, we all have challenges or vulnerabilities or whatever you would like to call them. Hopefully not disabilities, but, you know, because yes, I wear glasses. I don't feel that I'm disabled. I just am a little limited in what I can and cannot see. But this just gets to the point of really engaging the audiences that you're thinking about and being cognizant, as Erica said, about these prescriptive frameworks that we've been given. Any other light bulb moments?
Yeah, I think going back to Ellen's point about especially showing the exhibit map with sort of the hot points, that was something that came up in our group too, as a way to pace an exhibition. So you have moments of quiet and moments of excitement and sensitive to areas that are noisy and areas that are not so noisy. And those kind of sensitivities, I think, go a long way for people of all abilities to access different areas of the exhibit in different ways. I think also we talked a lot about giving people a sort of trigger map at the beginning so they know what the expectations are, you know, how large the exhibit is, where the noisy areas are, where the dark areas are, where areas that might be too stimulating or graphic are called out. And so you have that advanced knowledge before you actually go into the exhibit, which I think is especially helpful.
We talked a little bit about the barriers to opting in, right? Barriers to participation, but there's also removing the barriers for opting out, right? So that's the problem with IKEA, is that you can't escape. You know, that's the.
My daughter has found places to escape, and Dan, I'll talk with you about that separately, but she's on a spectrum, gets totally overwhelmed, and we know all the hiding spaces in IKEA, I just have to say. So
question in the chat.
I just want to ask,
additional
I
resources.
want to ask how people are thinking about, like, did any groups talk about how to work with these kinds of inclusivities and expectations in virtual exhibits, because so many of us are doing, I mean, I'm working with students now, teaching them how to design virtual exhibits. Any thoughts on that? Because we didn't talk about it in our group.
I put that out to everyone. I think, again, if you can put together focus groups and, you know, look at mock-ups online, I know that there are people out there who are hungry to participate in these types of things. I think it'd be easy to put a call out either through AAM or, you know, I mean, maybe NAME can help with facilitating some of that, with getting a call out to at least NAME staff and looking at that, or the museum's website for whoever they're doing it for. There is a question in the link that Penny, you were bringing up, and I don't know where it is because I mean in the chat because I'm not following.
Yeah, I was just hoping that a couple of people who've been chiming in around different cognitive or social emotional challenges versus physical disability, and wondering if there are other sites or resources or places that people can go for more information about some of those conditions. And I was asking if maybe you, when you share the PDF of the Jamboard with everyone as a follow-up, if there's some more links or resources that you might be able to include for us then.
I'll try. I have to say, this is a very new thing for us as exhibit designers to be thinking about. Honestly, I probably would not have gotten into this if my daughter wasn't on the spectrum. And now she also has schizoaffective disorder, which is schizophrenia with bipolar, which just changes the world altogether in going to museums. Yeah. So I think,
Rachel,
if I may, I am getting a paper published in the Curator about sensory sensitive programming in museums. So I can maybe share that with whoever wants it pre-published. I don't know if that matters to somebody, but it was co-written with a professor of mine at the University of Oregon. So I'm happy to share some of those resources as well. It was very hard, like Beth said, for us to find other studies about this that we could include in the paper, but I'm happy to share about that. That's kind of my jam. Beth, actually, I worked with Beth to create sensory kits for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And if you're interested in learning more about those, I'm sure Beth would be happy to talk to you about them as well as myself. Those were really special, and there's data that shows how they were used, and testimonials from our visitors about how they renewed their membership just because we had sensory bags now. So really simple things that a lot of museums can do that make a huge, huge difference. But
there's also, I'm working on a chapter right now about my work with the 10 young adults with autism and what that looked like and how you engage a group like that to create social stories. So with Nicole's comment about letting them know up front, it's even better to let them know before they come to the museum, so they can prepare themselves on what they need, whether they're headsets or fidgets or whatever else it may be. And I know we're getting cognizant of time. I know Beth has her hand up though.
Yep. I have just a quick comment. I have a student who just finished her thesis, and it was on autism at Disney World, the design of Disney World in comparison, in looking at children with autism. And she has lots of resources, and her name is Sawyer Coast. And she has lots of very current resources and guides and references. And I could, with her permission, send those along. They're very good. There are even some kind of like guideline sheets that certain organizations have put out.
That's great.
That'd be great.
So, and I just want to say one statement. I just want to remind everyone that children with autism grow up to be adults with autism.
Yes, thank you.
And this is one of my biggest pet peeves, because museums only think about 10 and under. But there is a whole population out there that, especially 1995 is where the big switch in the curve happened with autism. And that is our 24, 25, 26-year-olds right now. So need to keep that in mind, that autism is all around you. So, and I'm going to pass it back to Lonnie because I've talked too long and I know we're 4 minutes over. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Beth. Yes, thanks everyone for sharing an hour and a half of their day with us. Hopefully you guys felt this was really beneficial. Next one is going to be in hopefully March or April would be the next design forum. So please spread the word. Hopefully you guys will come back and join us. One of our goals is to also create a resource on the NAME website where all this design forum material will live, hopefully forever, for people to go back to and share and use for references. So the Jamboards, the recording, and a lot of this information that we're sharing, hopefully you can find there. So thank you again. Any last words, Penny, or are we all good? Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.